Welcome to the True That Show, a show about lifepreneurship presented with wit, humor, and banter by Deborah Drummond and Caroline Blanchard. A lifepreneur is someone who's living life the way an entrepreneur runs their business. All in. Lifepreneurs are rock stars. Lifepreneurs are people who are brave, who risk, who live full on, who think out of the box, who win this thing called life. Lifepreneurs are around us every day. They are everyday heroes. Join Deborah and Caroline, these two stage-walking women who tell it like it is. You'll learn from the most incredible lifepreneurs who will inspire you to be the best version of you. Now here are your hosts.
Hello and welcome back to the True That Show. Miss Caroline, how are you doing out on the East Coast today?
I'm doing fabulous. No,
Hey.
do I sound like someone? No, I'm doing really good, really good. Finally summer and yeah, I'm not gonna go into what I don't like, but the mosquitoes, like someone has to take care of this. But besides that, it's absolutely amazing. You did.
Well, I'm sure with all the entrepreneurs that we bring on this show, someone is going to come up with something, or we're going to get a message now on, okay, anyone out there, if you know how to fix Caroline's mosquito problems, please send in your solutions.
Yeah, well, I'm literally like, we can be 10 people out, no one gets bitten. And I come back with like 40 bites. I have special blood.
Okay, well, that's actually a really great kind of lead in into our guest today. And you're probably going to think, how does that happen? But you know, when something keeps happening to you and just you, like it's your thing, it's your story, because people would say, why is it her that it's always happening to? Well, we have a guest today that kind of had that epiphany around something that had happened more than once. And we'll let her tell her story on what that was. But it led her to explore that maybe there was something more that was going on than this physical condition that kept coming back. And I got to ask Caroline, I mean, we talk privately, we do a lot of chit chat, girl, gal, pal stuff. And I got to say, have you ever had that epiphany or the hit on the head, or you're in so much pain that you're like, I don't want to experience this again. It's kind of familiar, feels the same. I don't know. I'm going to go way on a limb.
Way on a limb, eh? Did it ever happen to me? Wait a second. My score is 2 marriage, 2 divorce. I think it did happen to me, Deborah. I think it did. It did. Well, still legally married, but regardless. Yes, I think that you can, unfortunately, it's when something is painful that you stop and you look at, okay, what's going on? Because I tried this and this and this. Why is it going on? And of course, you can stay in the victim mentality and be like, oh my goodness, why is everything happening to me? But a few years ago, I really opened my mind to taking responsibility in my life to what's happening is I created it. And, on the flip side, it's very empowering because when you talk to someone, you don't feel as helpless. You can tell them, well, can you dig a little bit into what you're doing or whatever to see why this is happening to you? There's so many examples I could give into relationships, but let's take one that, I have a friend who was like that. It's like every single person she was with was cheating on her. And then she would tell that to us and we would be like, oh my gosh, I would never take this and blah, blah. So you see some that have never been cheated on and some that are always being cheated on. And I'm not saying that she wants that, but clearly there's something she's attracting, or there's a certain behavior she's putting out there, or there's an energy in her or whatever. But there's a reason why some things keep happening to certain people. And, some people will listen to that now and be like, yeah, whatever. She's saying whatever she wants. It's not their fault. It's not this, it's not that, it's the weather, it's this, it's that. But I think that you can think like that forever until you realize that you're really in control of your life. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny as you talk. I mean, there's so many things that flash through my mind, right? And someone I've been in personal development and self-development for a long time. as it happens when you decide you're going to be an entrepreneur in your 20s. And I had to, I mean, I love how you say take responsibility. What I think I needed to do for myself. So there's different areas. So I've had relationship issues as well, where I've had stuff show up repeatedly. And I know in working on my finances, so you talk about relationships, let's talk about finances. And I know that I've had this quest, or I had a quest to get to a different place, right? And I remember, like, I felt like I was spinning my wheels and I wasn't getting to where I wanted to go, but doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing and having that kind of hard hit. And then I remember having to take a look at, someone said to me, maybe take a look at your belief systems. I'm like, what? Right? They're like, your belief systems. I'm like, oh no, I believe and I mean, if any of you guys know me, I'm pretty, focused, goal oriented, driven. And I was like, what is it? It felt like there was like this, like I was moving forward and it was like this invisible harness pulling me back. And I remember starting to research and go kind of, what was the stuff that I used to hear when I was growing up? And we've heard it 1,000 times. Money doesn't grow on trees. A penny saved is a penny earned. And I'm like, how much of that stuff did I believe? Because if I want to go here, but my belief system is here, somehow my belief system's winning because I keep getting into what you call some painful situations, or it taking me way time, longer than someone else or what have you. So I've had the relationship one where you're like, okay, I think even interpersonal relationships where I remember having to read a book once because I was in so much pain about relationship, and I went into my childhood. I mean, everyone, I don't blame my childhood, but I came from a home where there was some dysfunction in the area of relationships. And I realized that because I have observed a lot of dysfunction, I had a lot of tolerance for dysfunction. Dysfunction felt normal. So when I was in dysfunctional relationships, it didn't feel abnormal. But like you said, you would have maybe looked at it as a friend and went, what is she doing staying there? Or why does she have that girlfriend that's kind of insulting her or telling her jeans look good when they don't, that stuff. And it's like, because I'm used to dysfunction, it felt normal to me until I got to the age and stage in my life where the pain was bigger enough for me to start opening. For me, it was books. I got turned on to some personal development books, but I think it just takes self-awareness that, the responsibility that you somehow, it's not your fault, but you somehow bought the story. Like you went to the store and purchased it. And now you just got to throw that jacket away. And what does that look like? And who can help you do that? I'm kind of all over the.
Isn't that why though we say, oh, I would never go back to my 20s or my 30s? And then when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was just like, oh my gosh, what will I do when I'm in my 40s? I will be close to the end. And, anyway, but getting older feels so much better because we are getting wiser. Well, if you want to. Again, that's a choice. And that brings us to talk about the guest that we have today on, Tanya West. Tanya has such a unique story. Well, we all have unique stories. So I'm going to start with that. But, she has a very touching story, a story that is not an easy one, a lot of challenges, struggles, and everything. But she managed to turn that into something positive, something inspiring. And I won't say more about her story because I will let her say it. Tanya West, welcome to the True That Show.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's our pleasure. Every time we meet someone fantastic, we have to have them on our show. But I do, well, Deborah actually, met with you first, and she called me and she's like, Carolyn, you have to meet this woman. Like you have to, and it had nothing to do with the show. She was just like, you have to meet this woman. Her story is absolutely incredible. So Tanya, why don't you start by telling us a little bit, what's your story?
What is my story? That is such a good question. Well, as you know, and for the listeners, I've been through cancer too many times. Like we're talking about repeating behaviors and things that keep happening. And I can definitely relate to what you were talking about, the relationship angle. And for me also, it was this illness angle, having, recently gone through the serious version of cancer where they basically say it's terminal. And hearing those words after having brain surgery in October last year was not what I had hoped for my life. And, I definitely was afraid of what the doctors were saying to me when I was in the hospital for a few weeks. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, I am not going to let this happen. Like, girl, you need to figure out like what the heck is going on with your life and why this keeps happening to you and in your family. And there is a reason, and that's where this journey really began in that moment. So
So you're there. We have listeners and we have people that are watching. And so can you share with us that this was not your first experience with cancer? You had had cancer before. Maybe you can share with us how many times.
Mhm.
And what was the difference between the first time or second or that you got diagnosed with cancer to the point where they were like, okay, this is, you're now working on your exit strategy. What was it different about this time? Or was it a progression of the illness that made you start to think differently? Like, take us a little bit on the journey and share with us how many times you've had cancer, Tanya.
yeah, well, this is my fourth time, and it is the most serious one. And the first time I had melanoma in my 20s on my ankle. I had surgery for that. And then a couple years later, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that's when I went through 6 months of chemotherapy, 17 days of radiation. And my mom actually had breast cancer as well, on and off around me. And her cancer ended up metastasizing to her brain. And she had radiation on her brain. And I remember very clearly how she lost herself. And that was part of my fear. I'm like, I don't want that ever to happen to me. And I dove into the health world, getting lots of certifications, working at a health store. And over the years, I ended up getting twice basal cell carcinoma, skin cancer. And I shared my story before, speaking on stage and talking about my cancer and losing my mom, and my dad had prostate cancer, and it's like, oh my goodness. And I never thought that it's been quite a few years, and I never thought that it would happen again. And then all of a sudden last summer I wasn't feeling great, and I knew something was wrong, but when I went to the doctors and stuff, they're like, everything's fine, and I'm like, well, I don't think so. Like, I'm not feeling fine. And one day I ended up contacting my sister-in-law, and basically she thought I was having a stroke. And so she took me to the hospital, and a few days later I was having emergency brain surgery for brain cancer. And this was definitely the most serious one of them all, because basically they tell you, like, there is no cure for this cancer.
I just want to stop there, and I'm going to let Caroline talk
Mhm.
because you're the third person I know personally, two very intimately, that said, I'm not feeling right. Like I had, a very good friend of mine, I'm not feeling right. The doctor, oh, it's a lump. Great. Go to the ultrasound technician. Ultrasound technician couldn't quite get it on the screen. So the doctor came in and went, it's left over from breastfeeding, which, I don't think she had ever done, but, and then, and so she went off on her world, even though it still was there, was too afraid to go get a second opinion. She's no longer with us. Another girlfriend of mine who had melanoma, and then all of a sudden wasn't feeling good for a year, going back to the doctor saying, I'm not feeling good, to the point where they were getting annoyed with her. Same kind of thing, had an emergency situation. It was the emergency doctor that said, okay, you now have brain cancer. And so I think that right there, I just want to capture that if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And to keep digging, find a doctor that will listen to you, get to the answers, and that the world of second opinions is still a very tricky place, because people have been taught to not question authority. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and I'm sure Caroline has some things to share, but I didn't want that to go by.
Yeah, well, I think I absolutely agree with you, Deb. And actually on Facebook yesterday, I was reading the story of a Facebook friend, and she was sharing her story to pass the same message. She went to visit her daughter. Her daughter wasn't feeling well, so she decided to stay there. The daughter is 23, and the daughter was throwing up and having some fever, but she was like to the mom, I'm fine. I'm just like, I'm not that great. But you know, as a mom, we have this gut feeling and we're like, no. So the mom stayed the whole day. At 8 at night, she was like, no, it's not going well. We're calling the paramedics. The ambulance went and they tried to convince the girl that she didn't need to go to the hospital. They were like, you know, it's only fever. It's probably COVID. It's going to pass. It's going to be okay. The mom pushing it even more. She's like, no. And anyway, long story, she had to fight with it in the end. But when the girl arrived at the hospital, or condition, she basically had a few hours left. If she wouldn't have been in the hospital, she was done. And I've lived this same situation a few times with my son. You know, he was a preemie and I was young, like 24. So doctors don't really listen to you. And a few times I actually stepped up and confronted doctors and nurses for giving him certain dose of whatever in ICU and being told, man, step aside. And I was not. And, you know, one time they were giving him 10 times the dose that they were supposed to on a little body of 2 pounds. It's huge. But it was just a decimal that was wrong in the scripture, like the reports that they're following. But anyway, as a mom, I was fighting for no. And, you know, I think that we do it more for people we love and we don't do it enough for ourselves. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, I'm always like, oh, I'm stronger than that. I'm good and blah, blah, blah. So, but Deb is so right. And you as well, Tanya, it's like when it doesn't feel right, push it because it's your life in the end. And, you know, we tend to ignore this intuition or gut feeling or whatever. But I'm so glad that you did not ignore that feeling. There's one thing that I want to ask you, and you know, it's a deep question, but how does it feel to actually being told, you know, you have 6 months to go? Because it's a death sentence. Like then you start looking at your life completely different. You know, all of the things that you were postponing, there's no more time. I'm sure you start thinking about everyone you wanted to say something to that you didn't, and like share a bit about that experience with us.
Yeah, that so for me, I was told to be, I had on average a year, basically, was what they had told me. And I remember in that moment, well, I'd always wanted to write a book, and I had started writing a book about my last cancer and everything I'd been through, and I never finished it. And so a friend of mine was like, you always wanted to help people with this. This is what you wanted to do. So if not now, then when? You know, like, what are you waiting for? Kind of a thing. And that moment in the hospital when the neurosurgeon gave me the prognosis was soul crushing. I'll put it that way. And I'm a member of like a brain cancer Facebook group, and I see other people coming in there and getting the same message. And it's your choice, though. Like someone's healed from every cancer that's ever been out there. And so I really sat and thought about it and thought, okay, like you need to figure this out, like why this keeps happening to you. And it began my journey of all of a sudden people coming into my life, offering to help, and me accepting the help that was offered, which is a big thing.
let's talk a little bit about that, because I was sharing earlier that particularly certain personality types, triple A's, we have a lot of entrepreneurs that come and listen, because entrepreneurs and game changers and life changers, and that's what our show is about, is like everyday heroes. Heroes have a difficult time asking for help, because we're heroes, right? We'll like take the burden on and we forge forward and we throw up and say we're okay and mom go home. So what was that like to actually be in a place where, I mean, had it always been really easy for you to accept help? Was it a decision that you had to do? Like,
yeah, no. And so you're talking about personality types, and in my book that I've been writing, we talk about type C personality. And I find it true to most people that I know that have been affected by cancer. And I definitely did not accept help and did not ask for help, did not talk about my emotions and how I felt when I was hurt by people. And being known as the shy kid growing up, and being invisible was how I lived most of my life. And like you were talking about before about personal development, that changed my life. And also, I do feel like things happen for a reason. Like I was diagnosed with brain cancer, and the tumor is on my emotion center of my brain. And I'm like, gotta be kidding me. Like, seriously, what a cruel joke that is. And so I realized, like, okay, cannot hold emotions in. You are loud and clear. So I started talking about whatever was bothering me, talked about it. You know, I went through my life and forgiving myself and all those kinds of things. And oh my goodness, yeah, I definitely did not ask people to help me. That was such a hard thing to do for myself. And I know tons of people that it's not easy to ask people to support you.
And you're talking about one thing here, and I've heard it, you know, in different sphere, not necessarily cancer, but you know, we all know that person who always has a bad back, no matter what they do, you know. It's always like, oh, I'm gonna throw my back off if I do this or if I do that, and it's not because they're 70 or 80. Because there was just an article, the oldest man to run a marathon was 101. He just passed the finish line like 2 weeks ago. So
Wow.
if whoever says that they're too old, you know, I really want you to let that sink in. 101. So I completely sidetracked here. What I'm saying is that, you know, there's some people that it always happens to them. And one of the big thing that I was reading in a personal development book that had nothing to do really with health, it was that when you repress your emotions, it will store somewhere in your body. And some come out as always a lower back pain, or always the shoulders, or always the knee. And you know, you say it's a cruel joke. It is a cruel joke, but it's also, it must be mind-blowing for you to be like, when you really started digging in it, to be like, oh my gosh, this is what I've never dealt with, and this is where it is at. And one of the things that I'm sure most people struggle with is to forgive ourselves. Like, it's so easy to say, you know, I went on a path of forgiving myself, but that's a huge undertaking. And can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And like I mentioned, I had taken a certified holistic cancer practitioner course, and my nutritional consultant as well. And I know these things. So like, I know this. Why am I not doing it? And what I realized was there were a few things that I was not doing. And being an entrepreneur can be stressful. And, you know, I definitely learned the past few years being an entrepreneur how much stress I was bringing into my life and not managing properly. And also looking back further was what happened in my life that, you know, I accepted bad relationships. I accepted people cheating on me and all those wonderful things. And I also knew that I didn't want to carry any of that any longer. Like if there was something, like even though I felt like I forgave somebody, I don't think I genuinely meant it. You know what I mean? Like you still have that like little bit of bitterness inside you. And there is an experience that I talk about in there about having the same dream over and over again for many years. And it was a relationship I had. And one morning I woke up and I actually, the dream changed, and I heard a voice inside me say, "Are you sure? Like, you want to forgive this person?" And I said, I felt it. I felt the emotion rush over me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm done, like, with holding on to this." So, and I don't know, over the past 6 months, I've had many emotional moments, and forgiving myself as well for accepting, poor treatment of my heart, basically. And so yeah, it is such a huge piece to go through and really dive in deep. And I call it cleaning out my dustpan and making sure there isn't any dirt left in there. And that was like step one, of moving forward. So
So
yeah.
Tanya, I'm going to ask you, there's going to be listeners, and I'm sure you're hitting little hot spots for people, and I'm sure so are myself and Caroline, because by nature we've all been in an uncomfortable position, and we've had things happen to us, and we've most part if you're over 25, you've had some patterns maybe that you can recognize. And so when push came to shove, and you were like, and it came to you that you needed to forgive yourself, and I totally appreciate what Caroline says, how that's difficult to do, because that's actually a process. Right? That's a process that kind of unravels as they talk the onion and what have you. So who came together for you? Like, one of the things that I think from talking with you before, the sense that I got, maybe I'm not right. One of the things that me and Caroline talk is entrepreneurs, because we teach a lot of entrepreneurs to go from here to here. And you were going from here to here, from an unhealthy state to a healthy state. And one of the things that we dive down on is who you hanging out with. Who are the people you're hanging out with? And including what are you watching, what are you listening to, and what are you reading? So who's making the impression on you? And I know that you kind of ended up getting like a circle of people that kind of rallied and offered services. So what did you do? Because it may not be the exact same path for someone else, but who did you call in? And who did you make your core people to get you to shift in a way where you're sitting here talking about us, and then Caroline's going to start to bring up the book that you got going on and how we can support with that. So as this kind of final piece, how did you do it? So people can hear out there.
Yeah. Well, when I first moved to Edmonton, I was going to say about 6 years ago, I was working as an entrepreneur for a company in Toronto, and she was helping entrepreneurs as well. So when I moved here, I was working at home, and I seemed to quickly realize that this city was full of lots of entrepreneurs. And I started doing meetups and talking with people. And as I mentioned, integrity seminars, I did so much personal development with them, and I met so many incredible people, and majority of them are entrepreneurs because we want to better ourselves. That's why we're there. And when this happened, I had such a huge community around me of people that suddenly were offering all their services. Like, I want to gift you, 3 EFT sessions. I want to gift you, some counseling sessions, or soul retrieval, or hypnosis, and all these things that I've never been so overwhelmed by the support that I've received. And even having a group session of over 30 people praying for me while I was in emergency brain surgery, just mind blowing is exactly the word that I would use to describe it. And I can say I'm so thankful for everyone who stepped up, because if one person didn't, I don't know if I would be in the same situation. It was just like the universe said, you chose to live, so we're going to help you get there. And I do believe that there's a higher power out there that is going to work for you if you choose to accept it. So.
You know what I love about that is that I'm learning about energies and everything more and more, and about the universe and law of attraction and everything. And you had to make the decision to, and it's like that in anything, any project, any move in life, your health, whatever, you have to make the decision and not just say, I'm going to do that. Really make a decision inside, like, this is it. And you were at an extreme case. It's your life. So you made the decision, no, I'm not done. I'm not done. And then the universe conspired to send you the people that you needed. And because you made that decision, you were open enough to actually take in what was sent. Because sometimes, you know, the right things are sent to us, but we turn our back to it and we're like, no, thank you. And, you know, I applaud you for the work that you did on yourself, to the point of loving yourself enough to actually accept that help and, you know, embrace it. And like Deb said, I will talk about the book that you will be publishing soon, because I absolutely admire you. I admire your story. And I know that, you know, what you're sharing in an interview right now is really, it's a heavy subject. There's tons of emotions and everything. And I cannot wait to read your book, because I'm sure it's going to be, you know, you really poured it in all into there, of how you felt, how you went through it, but also it's an inspiring book that will really help people go through challenges, you know, to read your story and really read in depth how you went through your challenges. It will help. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be cancer. You know, there's other kind of cancers sometimes that I say that are not necessarily the ones that are diagnosed. There's worse cancer than that. Sometimes I feel like depression.
We're having a little bit of technical.
No.
So should I put some words in Caroline's mouth? Because I've done that before so many times.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. So we're having a little technical, and she's at the peace stage. So I think what she's talking about is really how people are going to get.
Yes. Okay.
Relate to making that decision. You kind of went off for a little bit. You were kind of doing the robot peace thing. So I just kind of stepped in and I talked on your behalf.
Thank you. I hope it was
so getting to the book. Let's do that. So your book, what is the title of your book?
You Are Stronger Than You Realize.
And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And I think that's a great title, because it doesn't define what it is that it doesn't define your particular story. It's very vast. And I think we all come up against ourselves at some point. And so I know right now you're in the process of raising funds for that. And so, it's a book that needs to get out there. You've had great people step up, and we're going to continue to ask for that step up, because you're on a funding. Maybe you can share with us what it is and where people can get that.
Yeah, of course. So obviously, when you're given such a serious diagnosis, you kind of stop working and you're working on healing your body, And so I haven't been working other than selling off some natural health products. But this book is something I really want to get out there. I'm 85% finished, and I'm so excited because it's really flowing together well. And but I do need some support to pay for editing and getting this book published and out there. So I would absolutely love any donations that can be made. And I'm sure the link will be put in here, but it is fundraiser, razr.com/cancerbook. And that would be so wonderful. I have a 4-minute video on there sharing my journey, and anything you can do would be so appreciated.
And I know that there's been people that have offered gifts as well. So when people do make donations, there's gifts of more books and all sorts of extra things. So not only do people get to donate, but isn't it nice when it can be reciprocated? So having that exchange of giving and receiving at the same time, so people can receive and gift at the same time. So Caroline, your backstory, I usually just get to cut you off, but you were kind of roboting and you kind of stuck at this. I'm like, oh, she's giving us the peace sign. So I'll kind of let you kind of close out the interview.
Yes, well, I will more than encourage people to donate. I will really insist. No, I'm just saying you should buy the book. It's going to be an amazing, inspiring story. So just pre-buy the book. Buy it before it's actually out. There's a donation amount there that if you do, you are getting a book for free. And that's what I'm going to go do. So do it for yourself. Do it to help Tanya. We want to see this book completed and published. And otherwise, it would be a shame. So let's all donate and let's all help Tanya. And Tanya, I just want to say it was beautiful meeting you. And you are an image of like strength and courage and resilience. There's so many different qualities I could say about you, but the one that I think impressed me the most is that you took responsibility. You really owned what happened in your life, and you chose to act accordingly instead of just giving up, putting your hands down and saying, no, I'm done. You could have done that, or you could have asked, why is it happening to you? There's so many different ways you could have acted. Instead, you're writing a book because you really want to share your story and you want to help people probably not go through the same thing. One of the leaders that I follow and that I absolutely love, Jeff Olson, always says, if someone took 20 years to write a book, why don't you just buy the book and read it to learn instead of going through 20 years of the same issues? Read the book and learn from it. And I think that we have tons of stuff to learn from you. And that's it. It was a pleasure to have you on. People go to fundraiser.
Thank you so much.
r.com/cancerbook. I will put the link, and I will let Deb close because she likes to have the last word.
There it is. There it is, people. So people that follow us, look, we're so excited. Thank you, listeners, for coming on. And we know that you're going to just flood the gates for Tanya. And there's a hero in all of us, right? There's a hero in all of us. It is the collective of people like Caroline and myself and Tanya taking ownership and being able to kind of be beacons for people, right? And highlight that if you can do it, she can do it, and he can do it. Really just highlighting again that, what Caroline talked about, responsibility, but bravery as well, like challenging the diagnosis, right? Challenging the doctor, questioning. It's not being disrespectful. It's like Caroline said, it's your life. It's like examining, does that fit? If something inside is saying, I think I want to go talk to another doctor, no one's going to get upset. It's like, I don't want to go back to that restaurant I went to last weekend because it wasn't quite what I wanted. The chefs aren't crying. No one's upset about it. So honestly, being brave and taking responsibility to explore, because at that point, why not? Right. And so I really also want to commend the people that stood up for you, that gifted to you. Right. And because, a little bit of gift here and a little bit of gift there and a little bit of gift that people can do just makes such an impact. And honestly, if we haven't seen that happen in this last year and a half as a world, I don't know what is. So thank you for your bravery. I know you sit there very stoic and loving and soft and kind, but we can all imagine kind of the process. And so we just wish this book lots of success, lots of good juice around it. And everybody go purchase that. So thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you for having me. It really means the world to me. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, ladies.